Good morning and welcome to TPM's webinar this morning. As you can see from the introductory slide, hopefully you're here to see a little presentation and get an idea of what Revit Live is all about, which is what we're going to be doing this morning. As far as an agenda goes, it's going to be pretty simple. We're simply going to, get an introductory of through some PowerPoint images of what the product is, where it came about, how we work with it inside of Revit, sending it up to the cloud, and then getting a file back. And then we're going to open up Revit Live and actually see how it works. So we want to go ahead and keep it simple, take a look at the product and see where this comes from its history and where it's going to go from here. To get started, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the history of where we came from and working with our visualization as it is. You can see on the left here, we got the concept of having our BIM capabilities for design review. Autodesk has introduced the ability to work collaboratively and to be able to share those ideas across, multiple offices and multiple coordinators and contractors. So we have that collaborative design review process. Along the same time frame, we've had cloud processing and delivery of BIM data. So through the cloud, we're able to share that data out there. We're able to, utilize that design review on the cloud. And you can see from the picture there, things like iPadding, having immediate access to that just data and design is up on the cloud as well. And BIM is, integral to most of our design processes now. And then finally, along with that, we have the evolution of our technology, democratization of a technology where VR, visual reality, is becoming a thing. It's really, most companies are either currently working to some degree in it, or they certainly are aware of the fact that they're probably going to be wanting to do that shortly. So having those three background concepts available, we want to improve the design quality, broaden your services, and communicate more effectively, as you can see. So what is it we can do? We can improve design quality. This is where the immersive visualization comes into play, something like Revit Live. I also would call this maybe some design validation, where we want to see what's going on in a more realistic manner, as opposed to just simply saying, well, I can see it in my head. Trying to communicate that effectively is the other part of this, where you can see on the right. Uh, we work in the industry as designers. You have an idea in your head, you're trying to communicate that into sheets of paper, and sometimes it doesn't come across very well, or you've worked with clients or coordinators or contractors that simply don't see what you're seeing. So that's how it can be done. And then broadening your services or to win new work. Obviously, the visualizations are there to help us determine if the design you have in your head, the design that you're trying to achieve, is what the client is looking for. So in the past, we've done that rather simplistic, either with hand sketch drawings, or as you can see here, this should be somewhat familiar. It's a 3D camera view out of Revit. So the model's been created in Revit, and we can say here's a perspective of this. So we can certainly validate our design ideas, our sight lines. And you can see they've gone so far as to add in a little bit of jagged lines. So we have that option there to have jagged lines and kind of almost a sketch look to it. Of course, this is blown up a little bit larger so you can really see. But if it was a smaller image, it would be a little bit more rough looking, a little bit more like a sketch product, or an image anyway. So with that in place, we kind of get an idea what's going on there. But for a lot of clients, consultants, coordinators, is this going to convey what you're asking for, or would this do a better job of it? So you can see, taking the same model and having the textures that have been applied inside of Revit, we simply take that using the Revit Live product and then move that up into cloud to get rendered and brought back down, and then we're going to interact with it. You're actually seeing a screenshot of the product itself. You can see there's a few icons on the bottom, which we'll be playing with shortly, and the ability to interact and move through this model, as opposed to just static images, is where we get that immersive visualization from. How's this done? Well, pretty simple. We start off with a process you're already familiar with. You're working in Revit. Working inside of Revit, you're creating your model. You're doing everything that you're currently doing. You really don't have to go out of your way to do anything different. The only thing different would be the possibility of adding or having different textures to look at or materials to see how it renders. Once that model's in Revit, you're going to use the button called Go Live. Once you're effectively saying, take the model as exists and let's send the model up to the cloud. And then Revit's cloud services, Autodesk cloud services, will take the model, render it, and bring back down or copy down into your Revit Live the final product that allows you to interactively work with and see what's going on with the inside the model. So rather than having a static image or even a static walkthrough, where you're really controlling where you can look at. This allows anybody using this tool, or the viewer, or being able to publish this image out to anybody that wants to be able to literally interact with and walk through and get an idea what the space is all about. So let's take a look a little bit about this. We're using what's called the Revit Live Editor, and you can see on screen we have the little tutorial that simply describes what each of the buttons are all about. One thing I really like about this, it is a very simple tool to work with. It's meant to be a simple tool. It's meant to be something that you do to say, hey, let's quickly create a live view of this so we can interact with it and see what it's like. We've got a meeting in a few minutes with some other people, or we just want idea to make sure that what we think we're seeing is actually there. So you can see we have some navigation tools on the bottom. We have our view tools on the right side. So it's a very easy process to work with. One of the things that's pretty exciting about this is once you have these tools, one of the tools you have on the bottom there is the ability to interact with the sun and shadows, and being able to determine shadow studies and see how this is going to work with, including being able to see what the lighting textures or what the effect might look like at night. When we're inside the product, you'll see this, so we can actually switch over to nighttime and see what the effect would be. So again, on the bottom, we have information tools to get access to a lot of the BIM data that we've created, as well as being able to interactively move around. Also, you can publish this, so viewers are available. So inside the editor, you have the ability to quite literally publish, is the term they're using. And publishing allows us to take the model that we've created, the textures you've created, the views that have been created, and y- package this up. You publish it out, and it creates a compressed zip file that you can then give out to any of the stakeholders, any of the owner of the company, I'm sorry, the owner of the building, any coordinators, anybody you're consulting with, and all they do is uncompress the file, and embedded within that compressed file is an executable. You just double click on that executable, and everything that's needed to interact with that model and to walk through that model is included in that published file set. So it's a very easy way of allowing your stakeholders involved to review and look at the model, and see if the visualizations, through those visualizations, are what they're after, what you're trying to achieve. Also, a word of note here that this is a VR capable tool, so virtual reality. If you have a headset available, it being the Oculus Rift or the Vive, if it's plugged in, you'll see there's a button in the bottom right corner that allows you to effectively activate or turn on that VR headset, so you can start interactively moving your head and being able to see what's going on inside. So it's concept of design review or design validation. We're going to get more realistic views. We have an immersive experience that allows us to say, like, let's walk through and interact with the model. Then like allows the better design. We can determine if it's a design we want to present to somebody, or it can be validated after the fact as well. So again, those are part of the internal team that can review this, improve your design communication, focus on the experience, focus on what the design is about as opposed to the presentation of that design. Focus on what does that offer? Is it actually satisfying the requirements of the client to say this is what we want? And hopefully that will speed approvals. Once the idea of what is being designed is approved and communicated, now there's less questions about, well, let's review this, or let's take another view at this. Hopefully this would speed up your approvals. So want to take a look at it? Let's go ahead and take a look at it. We're going to be using the model that you see in the background, but I'm going to start off in Revit. So you can see that we have the model inside of Revit, show you the process of working with the model and what we're going to do inside of Revit to send it to the cloud for the presentation or the rendering of the model. And then we'll go into the live product to see this. So let's just go ahead and switch over to Revit. So here we are inside of Revit. It's a model. It's the same model that you saw with some of the background images in the PowerPoint. Uh, it's a good model. Nothing particularly different about it than what we have to do for Raw Live. I think it's good to point out that you really continue working Revit like you always have. And once you've got that established, at any point that you want to, you can take this model and send it up to the cloud to be rendered through the live engine, so it can be interacted with. I do want to point out that we've got some views already in place here. Of course, if I double click on any one of these views, it's Revit. We can go out and see that view. And of course, you see in this case, some of these views are going to be solid shaded. Some of them are hidden lines. Different views to look at are out here. So once we got it into this, let's go ahead and go to the 3D view, just to say we're looking at something. And to actually submit and create the file that's created for the Revit Live viewer, we're going to go up into our view command up top here. And we go into the button here that says Go Live. The question is you don't have that there. Well, the reason you don't have it is because it's not part of your set. So let's just take a minute here and talk about how you're typically going to get the Revit Live product itself. As we speak, it's a separate product, but quite honestly, guys, things will be changed here in just a few months here. That the Revit Live product will all be available through the AEC collections. Now, that being said, those of you that have AEC collections now, you have Revit Live as part of that maintenance. A part of that bundle of products is the Revit Live product that is inside of the AEC collections. And again, starting in March, that's the only way those will be available. So once it's installed and worked with, you will get this Go Live button inside of View. Once that's in place, we're going to go ahead and pick on this. And we are going to get a little bit of a warning message here. It's actually going to be a stop warning. We're not going to be able to continue. When I go into this little message, it's printing there. It shows the product here, but this is the warning that really we don't want to go any farther than this. Verify visual style. The live engine is going to take the textures, the rendering textures that you have in the model, and obviously use those textures for the rendering. But those textures have to be visually active in the model. So while they are part of the defined object, the walls, the doors, the windows, the textures themselves have to be loaded into the model. So what it's telling us is we need to switch over to either realistic or ray trace view, so those textures are loaded in to the graphic model before we set it up to send it up to the cloud for the rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, and we're going to do that. So down here on the bottom, I'm going to simply switch our visual style over to realistic. It does take an extra few seconds because what it's doing now is going out and looking at all those materials and the definition of those objects and then loading those textures in. So we get a little bit better imagery that is based off the realistic textures that are in use. So you can see now the trees look a little bit more like trees. We have the brick and the stucco and the glass. But if I were to zoom into this, you'd see that it's certainly not rendering quality or high rendering quality, but it gives us a sense of what's going on. More importantly, in terms of working with Revit Live, we now have those textures loaded into our model. So now when we say we want to go live with this, it says, okay, fine, we've got the textures, we're ready to go there. The other thing to point out is what views do we want? Uh, I would imagine majority of the time you're going to want to take the perspectives that you've already set up. You've set up specific camera views and perspectives inside of Revit. Those are available there, you see on the left. And those are probably views that are important. We want to convey certain areas that are important parts of the building we want to show the clients. So rather than try to recreate those, let's go ahead and have those as defined views in the Revit Live model when we get it back from the cloud. And there you go. So we're saying we want to obviously use the textures, and we would like it to go ahead and create the views from inside the live editor, so we don't have to try to recreate those. Also note that when this is done, the service will automatically download the file to whatever folder you request or ask to be placed at. In my case, I've got a fairly generic Autodesk Live folder. So once the rendering is done, or it's a rendering, but it's only visible through Revit Live. But once that file has been created, it automatically downloads it, copies it into that folder, and then I can go into my Revit Live product and open it up from there. So now I'm not going to do that a save and go simply for saving a time. It's really not that bad. The last few times I've done this, it takes less than 5 or 6 minutes for this to occur. But obviously, I don't want to have to try to draw this out for 5 or 6 minutes. So if we pick save and go, we're going to get a dialog box that shows the status of this, about it being uploaded, being processed, and then downloaded again. So we're going to go ahead and switch on over to the live product and show you what the end result is once you get that file downloaded. So here we are. Once the file is downloaded, you'll actually go into this import scene tool up here. And that import scene is actually opening up these LVSC files, live scene files. Um, the way I look at it, those are compressed files that come down from the cloud. Obviously, they're compressed to try to so they download faster, save space. Once you select that live scene, it will then decompress it. Takes maybe a minute, and then you have this file that you can actually work with. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Takes a few seconds for it to open. There we go. So what you're looking at here, kind of a bad angle, but that's what was considered to be the home view. We're actually seeing the home view placed in the upper left corner here now. And let me go ahead and make sure my cursor is on this application. So there we go. So what we're seeing here is over on the left side, I'm sorry, the right side, we have our home, and then these are the views I just spoke of earlier. Those are all views that came across because they were defined views in the model inside of Revit. Now let's talk a little bit about the interface a little bit. You can see down here on the bottom we have orbit, tap and go, as well as fly, sun, so on and so forth. And then the visual style. So let's take a look at what we're looking at. Do what we can do here. I can hold down my left mouse button. I can simply orbit and pan, much like we do inside of Revit. So again, that is with the orbit tool here. And I can spin the wheel in and spin the wheel out. All right. You'll probably find yourself doing an awful lot of tap and go, though. There's a lot of benefits to the tap and go feature. One, it sees gravity. So we have this pad or this terrain out here. And with tap and go, I have this X. And what that does is it literally allows me to tap and it will walk me to that location wherever I pick. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few adjustments here just in terms of speed. That's not a bad walking speed, but in terms of this presentation and being on the web here, I want to make a few changes. So down here under settings, I can come over here to my traveling speed. And for instance, tap and go. I want to go a little bit slower just so we don't feel like we're running through there. And some of you might say it doesn't feel like you're running, but it makes a little bit navigation a little bit easier as well. So let's tap and go. We can also use our WASD keys, much like a more modern game where we can use our W keys to move forward, A and D to go left and right, and S to move backwards. So with that in place, you'll see now when I click once, it's a little bit slower. And what you might find yourself wanting to do is to take more immediate control. And we can do that by picking and holding down my left mouse, and I can simply pan or swivel my head around to where I want to see. And then from here, I'm going to hit the D key, and I'm essentially walking to the right. If I hit the W key, I'm walking forward. So I can point the mouse the direction I want to go and simply hit the W key to walk forward. Or again, maybe I pan to the up and move to the left as well. So we get very interactive uh, visualization, interactive feel, so we can walk through this entire building as we see fit to do so. So again, we can walk through here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the visualizations of which we're seeing here. One of those is the people. There are uh, RPC people placed here. You notice there's a little bit of a sway here. A lot of these animated people can move a little bit, and that would be through our options here. Whether we want those even visible or not, and do we want them to be a certain color of tone of white, see-through, black? How prominent do we want that to be? And do we want the actual animation itself to be visible? I'd say most people are going to want that to be maybe there so you have a sense of population here, but it's not getting in the way of the design. All right, so again, moving around. What else do we have available? Well, we also have these pins right here. Now these pins are representative of where the views are over here. So if I were to, for instance, come up down here and say I want to go to maybe that balcony, which is that one. If I click on the balcony in the view on the right side, it takes me there immediately. And I can go to any one of these views and it simply moves me immediately to that location. And we can see the pins, of course, on screen. If we wanted to, we could actually pick on a pin in the view and it would take me to that pin as well. So you can interact by picking on those graphical pins that indicate locations, or you could do it by simply going through the screen here or on the view, saying where you want to go. Another option you have available to you is, let's get inside here just a little bit and take a look at some properties here. If I go back into this pool room, down here on the bottom, I have, for instance, information. This information is the information that is going to be pulled from our BIM information or the instance properties that we get outside of Revit. So you can see these are the same properties we get inside of Revit. So if we're looking to see what the family name is, the type of element that it is, we can pick on this and we get that information here as well. So again, that BIM intelligence, the BIM data, metadata is coming across with the file as well. So that's what our information is showing us here. And so it's zoomed into where I was at, misclicked and picked one of the pins that started moving. So again, I'm able to just, use the WSD keys to move around and see what we're looking at here. I'm going to go back out to the outside here because I want to show you some other options we have. Well, let's go back to our main entrance. The other option we have is fly. The fly, well, let's go back. Let's show you a little difference here. If we do a tap and go or I just interactively walk through, I'm going to try to walk through our partitions here. And with an interactive experience of tap and go or walking the way we're doing, you'll see that I am not allowed to go through partitions. However, if I use the fly option by being able to fly around, then I can go through our partitions as well as being able to point where I want to go. And using the W key, I'm essentially flying up in that direction. Again, I can hit the D key and kind of move diagonally. So as I'm going up, I'm also to the right. If we look dead on, I can use the Q key to go up, like we're on the elevator, or I could use the E key to go down. So you can see I can simply navigate to the right and start to see what this looks like as I'm moving around. I'm going to go ahead and drop down a little bit. And now we can think about how we want to work with this. So for instance, I'm going to come out here and I'm going to do a tap and go, I don't know, let's say right here. And you see as I'm moving, I can also hold down my left mouse button and can pan as it's in the middle of the move process. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and back up just a little bit. Because the next thing we want to look at is the shadow studies, the sun. What time of the day are we at? We can control that with our sun settings down here. So we have our sun settings, the time of day. So if we're simply dragging this across, we can start to see where the shadows lay and what time of the year we're at when we do this, whether in January, February, March, going through the summer months. Now your next question might be, well, where is it based off of? Well, the actual site location or the latitude and longitude is coming across from how the building was sited or how you use your siting tools inside of Revit. So once you've established a site location in Revit, that exact same latitude and longitude is brought across inside of Revit Live. So we do not position the building in this tool. It's using what's been defined inside of Revit, but we can control obviously the time of the day it's at. To that end, one of the things we have available to us under settings is our light. So friends, I'm going to turn off the pins. So you can see if I want a little bit cleaner screen, I don't want those pins to be in the way. And we can work with our lights. Automatic is probably what you're going to have on most of the time, on or off. Automatic is seen at night only. Because now when we go into our sun, you see as I slide into the evening, it will turn the lights on as it gets dark. And now we can start to see what the presentation, of the building would look like at night. And we might even want to pick time of the year where we might have a little bit of a darker night without a full moon. So far more impactful than just simply having a black and white graphic. And the ability to determine if this is what we're after, what the client is looking after or looking for, allows us to interact with this when we do this. So there you go. That is the concept of working with Revit, and then using the Revit tools, building the BIM models you created, pushing it out to the cloud, bring it back, and using this live editor to simply interact. So again, you'll see down here on the bottom right, I do not have my VR headset available at this time, so it's not available. But if I did, I'd be able to click on that and then be able to, move my head around and be able to visually interact with it. It's still a VR experience even without the headset because you are able to pan around and zoom, and it's not just a static model as we're walking around. The other thing I want to point out is the publish. As you probably want to give this to stakeholders, clients, coordinators, consultants, you can go into the publish command here. And this is what I was talking about earlier in the PowerPoint, that when you publish this, it creates a compressed zip file, actually multiple files, of all the files that are necessary for this to be a interactive experience for the end user that works on it. That zipped file, the compressed file, can simply be unzipped or uncompressed at a file location of their choice. It creates an executable. So they simply double click on the executable and they're in the interactive experience. They don't have to download a separate viewer. They don't have to download the file. It's all in one zipped compressed file that can be given, can be emailed or up to a BIM 360 Dropbox folder or the BIM 360 desktop. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can get that file to one of your clients or consultants. So there you go. That is what the Revit Live is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to our presentation and start wrapping this up. So one of the things you'll see is that Kevin Smith has given us an idea of what can be done here. He's CEO of Spine, which is a multimedia and visualization studio that is using a lot of different tools, including Revit Live, to convey these concepts of design and intent to their clients. So next steps you might want to think about using. One is you can go to Autodesk.com. You can go ahead and download the trial version and work with it. You can see it supports up to 10 cloud service jobs. Anything more than that, you're going to have to get involved with purchasing it or working with the AEC collections to work with that. And again, you can see down the bottom it is included with the AEC collection. So again, for the folks or companies that have AEC collections, this is part of your bundled set of softwares and can be installed and start working with it right away. One thing that's not on the video here, or I'm sorry, on the presentation, is the idea of working with cloud credits. If anybody's been working with Revit for a while, you can do your renderings up on the cloud through the cloud rendering engines that are up there in Revit. However, they do require or consume cloud credits. Big difference there, of course. Those are can be fairly high resolution, but they are static. Since this is part of your AEC collection, at this time, there are no cloud credits being used for these services. So as you're making versions of these models and downloading them and taking a look at them on the through the Revit Live Editor and interacting with them, it does not consume any cloud credits. So again, the flat rate of the subscription or maintenance agreement that's part of your collection covers the cost of that for now. And I say for now because honestly, we'll see if that stays. Hopefully it does. But at this time, there is no cloud credits being consumed. So, so there we go. Hopefully that will give you a good introduction of what Revit Live is all about. It's available now. It's a very well defined product. And again, a lot of you probably already have this because it is part of your AEC collections. So for that, I'll thank you for your time this morning and say we appreciate your time. And hopefully we can have a few more of these types of webinars to let you guys know what's going on with the new products and services available from Autodesk and TPM. So thank you for your time and you have a good day.